What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Yeah, you're the intro here. Keep going.
That's it. That's all you get.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. This is one of your co-hosts, Dr. Mel, and I am excited to bring on our first guest of season 2 of the Project Lioness podcast. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see who it is. And maybe you don't know who this person is. Some of you might because of social media. But many of you have asked a lot of questions related to building a business, being a powerful person in the world, being an entrepreneur, and how that looks in relationships. And I am definitely not one to give relationship advice. So this is not a substitute for therapy. This is not a substitute for relationship advice. However, my guest here, my husband and I have gone through quite a bit in the last 10 years of being together, and we wanted to share some insight. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm grateful that you're here. This is the first official, you'll hear an intro episode to season 2, but this is the first official, podcast of season 2, and you're my first guest, and I wanted to bring you on as my first guest before anyone else because you're a very primary support person in my life, and I could not do what I do without you. So who are you?
My name's Ben. I'm your husband. I guess I wish I could have been on season 1, but season 2 works for me.
We didn't have any guests in season 1.
Got it. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I'm Ben. I feel like everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people that I will meet either at your office or otherwise know who I am.
That's true.
And I've never seen them in my life. And then it makes it a little bit awkward to navigate that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's like a one-sided intro. Yeah, I'm Ben.
Yeah, people will, they've seen Ben on like Instagram because he's not really, you're not really on social media at all.
I have social media accounts. I very selectively go on there or post anything.
Yeah, you're not really on like Facebook or Instagram that much.
No.
I'm laughing because of your Instagram grid strategy.
Yeah, I had a failed attempt at posting the exact same Instagram post once a year. That lasted about 3 years, and I just got sick of it. The joke wasn't funny enough to anybody other than me to keep going. So
it was funny to me. I supported you in that endeavor.
I think that was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. I haven't posted a single thing on that platform since.
Who knows? Where I'm laughing because as Ben is speaking to, there are people who are like, oh, you're Mel's husband. And he's like, hey, I don't know who you are, but they know him because I'll show pictures of us on date night or just funny pictures of us. And it is quite a, he's like, hey, I don't know who you are. You're kind of like a celebrity.
It feels like it sometimes in your office. If I'm ever waiting in the front, everyone seems to know me.
Or Ashley's like, this is Mel's husband.
Totally.
Dr. Mel's husband.
Totally. And I'll admit, like, I don't do the best job at remembering people's names. So I've definitely, like, met people before. And then, like, they feel like they know me because they see some of our lives on Instagram, especially. And then I don't even remember their name. And then I'm, whatever. It just is.
Yeah, it just is. Well, thank you for being on this episode. we wanted to come on here and share the evolution of our relationship, because I'm an entrepreneur and he is an engineer. So I run my practices, my businesses, and he is employed by someone. So it's a very different dynamic than maybe some like entrepreneurs you listen to, where both of the people in the relationship are part of the business, or both of them are entrepreneurs. And I think our relationship provides a very unique standpoint when one of us is building their own businesses and the other works for someone else, and how we've learned how to navigate that. Because we come from two very different worlds in that sense, and we have learned to make it work, not without challenges. So we want to go all the way back to the beginning and share, how we met, what challenges we dealt with, especially when I was in chiropractic school, other challenges that we dealt with when I started opening my first business, Inspire Life Chiropractic Center, and how over time we've been able to use a lot of tools and strategies to help us not rip each other's heads off and continue to love each other. Over 10 years we've been together. So let's go all the way back to how we met.
Which version you want?
It was 2010 that I transferred from Mankato State University to the U of M, the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. And the first time I saw you was at a rugby party, and I was like the new girl on the team, the new player on the team, and the new person at the school. And our friend Mary Russell, I don't know if she listens to this, but she was like, "Mel, are you single?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "I want to introduce you to boys." And I was like, "Okay, Mary." And mind you, Mary is like so innocent. She's got a dark side, I think, but this is like, she's just so spunky and full of life, and she's like, "I'm gonna introduce you to boys." So she grabbed my hand and we go to the back porch, and she's like, "Mel, this is Ben." And then Ben, what did you say?
I think I said, "I know who you are."
Yeah.
Was that in 2010?
Like reverse. It's like
was
reverse.
That really in 2010?
Well, I mean, that's when I transferred. Yeah, 2010.
But I think it was the next year when it was not in 2010 when we met. Because I was not in the country in the fall in 2010.
No, because you were gone.
I think it was the next year.
No, it was 2012.
Because I knew who you were, because I had lots of the...
That's right. I fucked up the story.
Lots of the guys on the rugby team we would go and watch the women's games, and like I had been not super close friends, but I knew some of the other women on your team. Mm-hmm. And so we would go and watch them, and like you were one of the 2 or 3 best players on the team. So like I knew who you were. So that was where my comment was coming from. Like I had seen you play. Right. I had seen you play, and I knew who you were, because you were not just like a scrub on the bench. Like you were one of the... Weren't you a captain?
I was the captain.
Yeah, you were captain on the team. Like, yeah, I knew who you were.
So that was 2012 then, at that party. You're right. Because, like, you were gone in South Africa. And then, yeah, so then Ben and I met. And my first thought was like, oh, he's cute. He's attractive. And then I didn't really think anything of it, because I just didn't. I was like, oh, he's out of my league or something like that. So I didn't really pursue it. And nice. We had a game that weekend, so I was not partying. So I was not, looking to have a good time, so to speak.
I mean,
I was having a good time, but sober, having a good time. This is when,
that seems fair.
By the way,
this seems way more in depth than I was ever thinking that we would. I thought it was going to be like, yeah, we met playing rugby in college and move on. But no, we're going into details of dates and...
No, we don't. You can tell how emotionally charged my brain was at that time. Okay, so then we like met, we connected, and then we didn't connect as much, and then we connected again in 2013. And then we started dating in 2013.
Yes.
And then I went to chiropractic school fall of 2013. So we enter into this relationship, and then like you knew that I was going to chiropractic school and you were about to graduate. So he's about to go into his professional career, and I'm about to enter like the craziest schooling time of my life. And I remember, once I saw how challenging chiropractic school was, there was a lot of moments where I was like, oh, like I feel like I can't give to this relationship. And throughout chiropractic school, we had, some breaks in our relationship. because we had our own stuff come up. You know, for me, it was feeling like I couldn't give to the relationship. I couldn't show up for him because he would literally drive to my house while I was studying like a crazy person for, I mean, those of you who are chiropractors or done any sort of graduate level program, you're in school all day, and then you're basically studying from, 5 p.m. to, I don't know, at times I'd probably study till midnight, and then you're back awake again at like 6 a.m. to go to your labs or to study before school because it's just fucking crazy. So to have a relationship at that time, our relationship was basically Ben would come hang out and lay on the couch and hang out with me, but we weren't really like hanging out.
I mean, that wasn't it, but that's what it
felt like for me.
That was a large portion of it. But I guess to provide some context to where I was coming from, like when we first met and went on did we just go on like one date or something right away? I don't remember.
Which one? The first time we met or the second time?
When we went to the roller derby. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, our first date was at the roller derby.
I was definitely hesitant to, at that point in my schooling, I wouldn't say struggling, but I was having to work really hard to get even decent grades. Mm-hmm. There was a couple of semesters through engineering school where like I had multiple classes where I wasn't sure if I was even going to pass. Yeah. So I was having to put max effort into school, and so I was hesitant to like be anything more than friends with you because I knew my capacity was going to be super limited in what I could and how I could show up. There's probably other reasons too. Hadn't really ever been in a super serious relationship before. So maybe some hesitancy around that as well. But like I knew where you were coming from while you were having to press into school and really put max effort into that because of the workload and how meaningful it was to you. So like I had been through something similar prior to us ever dating. And so it felt like, I mean, yeah, there was times where it was really difficult, and yeah, it wasn't easy. We broke up how many different times? 2 or 3 times? Was that all while you were in school?
Yeah, I think it was like, until I opened my practice. Yeah, since I've opened my practice, we haven't broken up.
Right.
We are married now.
We are.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly where I was going with that, other than just
extending the understanding.
Yeah, just to, for sure. And at that point, when you were in school, it was so clear to me how passionate you were about what you were learning and what you were going into. That was, I just came from the perspective of like, I would be doing you a massive disservice if I was going to be like annoying you and be like, I need more time with you or whatever, right? So it was okay. I was working, but other than that, I wasn't doing it wasn't super. I don't know. I don't really even know how to describe it, but it wasn't like a burden on me to just come and spend time with you. And if that's what we got, then that's what we got.
That's so sweet. I think too, something you said, about us breaking up those times because once you get into a relationship for X amount of months, we know that like the honeymoon phase wears off and your shit starts to come up, right? And relationships are a perfect like breeding ground for like receiving a mirror back to yourself of the shit that you have to work on. Like growth happens in relationship. And when the moments I know that we broke up, it was really challenging, and simultaneously, like it did, I think my perspective is every time we got back together, there was a level of, we had done some self-reflection, we had done some personal, inner work, to look at, why do we feel like we can't resolve and go through conflict, and the strategy was to just run away. And we'll get into some stuff that we've committed to in marriage that has really, really helped us. But I think to those of you who maybe have been in like similar situations, or you feel like every time a challenge emerges, you both run away, that is a version of a trauma response. So for like my style, I would press into the arguments. Like I would sometimes pick arguments. And mind you, my mental, emotional well-being when we first met is very different than who I am now. I've done a lot in my life to like heal my own traumas, to heal my own body mind, which in turn has showed up in my mental health, to like be in challenge and conflict and not be like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't love me and they're gonna run away, and so I need to like pick fights and like try to like latch on. Like that was kind of my style as I've learned, which I think you would speak to. Yours was more like avoidant of like, once things got intense, it was like, fuck it, I'm out, you know, whereas I would be the one that was like more the aggressor and wanting to pick the fights.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or even at a minimum for me to like, I need to be out of the immediate, confrontational interaction for like a number of minutes to just like collect myself and gather myself. I think that was definitely kind of a pattern that we had for a while, which was, if something came up, even if it was a small disagreement or maybe a request or a demand, like from your side or from my side, and it would just kind of naturally turn into like the insecure defense mechanisms from each of us would pop up immediately. Like that was the immediate response was, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? And then that would then escalate to you then responding back with, and it would just like kind of incrementally get escalated. And if I was then needing to remove myself for a few minutes to like try to gather my thoughts and my emotions, then like that was not allowed by you, because then you felt insecure about me stepping away, like, oh, you don't care, you don't want to be in this, you don't want to resolve this. And so I think there was
oh, you're gonna run away forever like my dad did. That was the narrative, by the way, that would pop up for me, as if he needed to step out and like go for a drive or go for a walk. My nervous system couldn't even handle that, because I was not secure within my own being and my own intensity with the situation. So I would project onto him like, oh, you're just leaving like my dad, or like this isn't destined to work because, I had shit with like my parents' divorce or things like that.
Yeah. And I think for me, a default was like, oh, like if you had even a small gripe with something that I was doing or something you wanted to be done differently, whether it was around the house or how I would interact, like it was very defensive of like, oh no, like I know better. I can't believe that you're questioning me. And then that would just kind of spiral from there.
Yeah, it was like oftentimes it would be like a self-righteous competition where we both had to be right and neither one could like back off and be like, you know what, I hear you. And we've done a number of things that have helped, which we'll get into.
Well, and I don't think that's unique to us, right? Like I think that's an interpersonal, pretty standard, where, if you are unable to like recognize, hey, I'm getting upset about this conversation, and it's not because I'm upset with you, but it's because I'm upset potentially with the emotions that are showing up because of things that I have experienced or witnessed in the past or whatever, right? And then your small request, which could have been easily just had a normal adult conversation, like, okay, that sounds good, I think that's dumb, but okay, cool, like just as a goofy example, right? But if we're like not able to interact on that level, there would kind of be default into, well, I need to get defensive about myself because I don't feel secure necessarily. And same for you, and then that can just kind of
explode like a volcano.
For sure.
And by the way, we're going back in time and sharing when there were probably more challenges than not. And we'll share with you what's helped us evolve out of that. And it's not that we don't deal with challenges anymore, but our ability to move through them and grow from them and actually bring us closer together has exponentially transformed. And one of the things that I used to do quite a bit, and I've been pretty open about this on like the Project Lioness Cohort, when I share my own healing journey, or just anytime I do any speaking or teaching, is, you know, for me, when I was going through chiropractic school, it's a big transformation. Like, you're learning a different paradigm of health and healing, and honestly a way of operating in the world and way of seeing the world. And so oftentimes I would project onto Ben, or, you know, tell him, hey, you have to change who you are, which really isn't fair to anyone, you know, because I was so big into like, you've got to transform and you've got to like change, and no one wants to be changed. No one wants to be fixed. Everyone wants to be loved for who they are. And when they love themselves deeply, that's when like spontaneous transformation is possible. But a lot of the things I was going through, I was like, oh, well, I've got to fix this in my relationship. I've got to change this in my relationship, versus allowing you to go on your own process of self-discovery, right? And I think a lot of people that I talk to, especially a lot of women, feel that way sometimes, where maybe they're doing something and their partner's doing something different, and then they come back and they don't know how to talk about it, or they don't know how to, you know, invite their partner into the process of growth without making it feel like something's wrong with their partner. And maybe, I don't know if it makes sense for you to share your side of that now, or maybe later, but that was my way of trying to deal with it, was control, which the more you try to control and change someone, the more they're going to resist if they have any level of like self-autonomy, which, looking back in hindsight, I would never want to be with someone who didn't have their own level of like autonomy and choice, and know who they are, and maybe like stick up for themselves, you know, who could just get bulldozed over. That's definitely not the relationship that I want to be in. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you were spot on with how you described that. In, you know, if you are, as you were going through the process and continuing to, right, as the days, months, weeks, you know, years go by, we're constantly learning things, and you are a different person now than 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I am also. And I think along that process, there were many times where you had clearly seen benefit from something you had learned and changed in your life, that you desperately wanted to share with me, and for me to be able to share that with you. But I think the delivery and your way of trying to go about like enrolling me in what you were learning or what you were up to was not working for me at all. It was very much, and I think some of this is some of my own insecurities, but it definitely, when we would have conversations, it would make me feel like I wasn't good enough, and if I didn't do this certain thing, then it wasn't going to be good enough for you, and that wasn't going to work. Yeah. Right. And so then that brings in all sorts of questions about like, well, you just said it, like an autonomous person. So I want to be able to make my own decisions, but also recognizing there are going to be sacrifices in a relationship that do need to be made. Like, I'm not going to get my way 100% of the time. So trying to navigate when you're telling me you need to do this or whatever, then how can I even like in good faith, like go along with that, knowing it almost feels like an ultimatum, right? Mm-hmm. And that would not work for me. And there was definitely been disagreements and arguments numerous times between us about those kinds of things. And the way it was delivered. I
had great intentions, but really shitty delivery. Because yeah, there is something to like, for those of you who choose to constantly challenge your consciousness, grow, transform, whatever that is, because I know a lot of our audience is like entrepreneurs or healers or leaders. It's important to also give your partner the spaciousness, their own self-discovery process, and it happens in, you know, healthier timing, I think, when you can stay curious and come from a place of invitation versus forcing and changing. I think it's important to hear both sides. One of the things that one of my mentors talks about is a relationship is whole when you can see and love all the parts of what your partner has that are different than you. And oftentimes, you know, opposites can attract, and that can be really, really healthy and balanced in a relationship when your partner can have different values than you, and you can actually learn to love them and their values, and vice versa, which actually creates the whole where you both are different, you both have similar values, but you can see how when you both live into your values, it actually creates more wholeness in a partnership versus being with someone who's the exact same as you. Because if you're constantly around people who are the exact same, have the same exact beliefs, have the same exact paradigms, that can get really dangerous when you're not challenged. And that's something I've learned over the years, especially through, listening to Dr. John DeMartini and being certified in his work, is when you can see your partner's challenges, or like when those challenge points come up, it's actually serving you to wake up to those parts of yourself that you have disowned and become more of a whole human being, and not be so one-sided and not be so addicted to like, well, it's got to be this way and we need to agree all the time. Because if you're agreeing all the time and you don't deal with challenges, you're actually not growing. So it's through the challenges that we grow, if you choose to see it as a growth opportunity versus making it mean something about you, or a lot of other a lot of other ways that can show up as like old trauma responses.
Yeah, I think it's this whole idea of, if while you're learning new things, or while you're learning new things, like I'm not going to be following along in your footsteps, doing everything that you do. Mm-hmm. And like we obviously enjoy living life together and doing lots of things together, but there's absolutely things that you love that I have essentially zero interest in. And that's the same for me, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's things that I really enjoy that you have no interest in. So I think the really cool thing that I think have gotten to the point over the last, I would say ever since we started working with Monica in 2020, was our ability to be comfortable with that and to be able to share what you're up to and be real in a conversation of like, hey, I'm sharing this just as something to talk about, something to be curious about, versus like, this is something I need from you. Mm-hmm. Like, I need you to be along with me in this and to like make that clear. Mm-hmm. Because, just real tangibly speaking, I'm not going to be going along to all of the chiropractic or other healing work that you are involved in. I'm not going along to all of those things. Yes, I have gone to some of the chiropractic seminars. They're really not for me. That's not my cup of tea. I am interested in what you're up to, but I don't need to be in a seminar for 4 days. And
but he has come to them.
But I have. Although the one I'm thinking of was in Colorado, and I think I left partway through one day to go back to the hotel room to do a fantasy football draft. Yeah, so did. I still kept my priorities straight. Yeah.
It was a both and situation.
But you know what I mean? Like there is a difference between, hey, here's something I learned, I want to talk about it because I know that it's meaningful for me to be involved in what you're up to, at least to some extent. But like, I don't need to follow along and be with you, whether physically or even intellectually, know what you're necessarily learning or talking about. And same goes for me, right? Like there are things from my 9 to 5 workday that I share with you because it's either impacting me, or it was a cool win, or something that is really, I think, interesting to someone other than an engineer. And there's other things that I just share just so that you are aware. And there's nothing more than just, hey, this was something that happened today. I don't need anything from you. I don't need you to be involved, but just letting you know, right? So I guess I kind of see there being, for us, a clear distinction, at least the last number of years, between that. So it's not feeling like I need to know everything you're up to and be deeply, in the weeds and whatever you learned last weekend, but I can be involved to whatever extent you need.
I think that comes down to, a number of things. Like one, learning how to communicate, which we'll share some strategies and people that we've worked with that have helped us communicate more effectively. And it also comes down to like being secure in your own being as an individual on the planet and not going into like codependency, because I've learned to love all parts of myself and know my value, where I don't need Ben's validation, let's say, in something I'm doing in the business. Like, yes, he helps a lot and just hears if I have tough days, but I don't need him to know every single detail in order for me to like make progress, because you support my individual vision as well as our collective vision. So I think, yeah, communication though. I think it's The Art of Communication. We read that book right there. Thich Nhat Hanh.
We read that?
We did, yeah, right there.
There's a lot of books over there.
The Art of Communication is a great book. We did read it together because you took notes in the book and we would talk about it. It's all about like asking.
I literally don't remember that.
Well, I see it show up in our relationship, so you clearly absorbed some wisdom. But that book is really great at uncovering what your needs are inside, and if there is challenge or conflict that emerges between two people. And it's great not only in intimate relationships, but if you work with teams, with your kids, and it's all about getting down to like the core need that you feel like is not being met, and learning how to ask for a request, or just say, hey, like when you do this, it makes me like, I feel this way in my body. And it doesn't mean that that person is intentionally causing harm, but you can say, hey, for example, hey, when I'm sharing a really powerful story that happened at the office and you're not giving me eye contact, I feel like you're not listening and with me. And that doesn't mean that that's the person's fault, but just talking about what is so versus it like making it like, well, you don't care. It's like, well, maybe he's doing the laundry or something and it's not the ideal time to have a conversation. So a lot of what we've learned that we're going to go into is like how to ask questions, how to ask for requests instead of being like, I need this. It's like, hey, I have a request. Are you open to listening to the request? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because like 90% of your requests are, will you go get me a Topo Chico from the fridge? Or will you shut off that lamp when you've been laying on this couch for 30 minutes and I just sat down, but now I want you to get up and turn the lamp off?
It's very true.
That's why I'm laughing.
It's very earthy things.
But like, you're totally spot on. I think that was really a turning point in our ability to communicate in a healthy way, which was to take away the languaging of like just turning things to be a matter of fact. Like,
yeah. You're making me feel this way. It's like, well, no one can really do that.
Right. But I am feeling this way, and I'm perceiving it to be because of what you are up to, or the environment we're in, or whatever. And I think just like being able to reduce the charged language in like, you're making me mad, or you're making me angry, or whatever, in turning it more into, I'm feeling this emotion right now.
Yeah.
You are a part of that because we are interacting, but I'm not blaming you, but I'm making you aware of how I am internally feeling based on what is going on right now.
Yeah.
Now, if that means I need to take 5 seconds and step out and come back and we can reset the, start over the conversation, or if that means I need you to put down what you're doing potentially and pay attention to me because I have something that is really important, whatever that may be, but just kind of removing some of the charge of like, you're making me mad, I can't handle this, whatever.
Because that takes you out when you, not just Ben, but like the audience, the listener, when you go into that polarity of like, you're making me mad, and there's no specificity or there's no ownership of the emotion, you're actually giving away your power to change it. So if I was like, you're making me mad, and it's like, well, like I could shift that and say, right now I'm feeling angry and I feel a tightness in my chest, and I want direct communication right now. Like my request is direct. And this takes time and practice to like slow down your thoughts, especially when your amygdala and your emotional brain is like firing on all cylinders. This can definitely take time to go into self-recognition of like, okay, yes, this action or inaction that my partner's doing may be eliciting something in me that I need to explore. But when I can own the sensation and the emotion in myself first, and then have a conversation, that can allow for a deeper resolution and actually solution moving forward, versus if you just immediately go into like, well, you're doing that and it's like, you're pissing me off. It's like you just gave away all of your power to actually like work with that emotional intelligence. So let's get into some points that have helped us make it work, even with challenge. So number one is having a clear vision of what we want. And we can definitely attribute this concept to my coaches, our coaches, I guess you could say, Nick Peterson and Dan Nicholson. Shout out to you guys. I don't know if you listen to this, but we got super clear on what we want in, when did we do that seminar? Was it 2021?
No, 2022.
Was it 2022? And we've done some things before that
January.
that we'll get to. Yeah, but that seminar that we took together, just knowing like what is it that we want in life, and like continuously asking like, why do we want it? What do we want? Why do we want it? Like, that helped us, I think, break through some big barriers in our psyche to get clear together on what it is we're building, while also simultaneously not sacrificing what we want as individuals.
Totally. Yeah. And getting really specific and when I say that, I mean, like, where do we want to live? What do we want our day-to-day or week-to-week life to look like?
Yep.
Right? Not just, next year, am I working towards trying to get a promotion or a different job, or you're trying to, serve X number more people at your office or whatever. It was like, what is the big picture? What do we want our life to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Getting really clear about that between us and having, multiple, like, where we scheduled, hey, we're going to order takeout and spend 3 to 4 hours looking through house listings or looking through property listings, getting clear on how much money are we even talking about potentially needing for what we're wanting to do, so that you can kind of work backwards and say, all right, what are the things that we need to be doing now to set ourselves up for being able to do that, and not just, oh yeah, it would be great to
just keeping it in fantasy world or on your vision board. Like
I push back on doing vision boards. I'm not really bought into that whole concept yet. That's one thing that maybe you are into, but
no.
I'm not. I mean, I know it's something you've done in the past. You have made vision boards.
Yeah, but you got to be real with it. You got to put numbers to it.
I am definitely not a proponent of that. And if it works for you, it works for you. I'm just an engineer. I just do numbers. I don't know anything about this stuff. But to me, tangibly talking about, okay, like, we like to travel. Okay, what does that look like? How many trips per year would we like to be doing into the future when we are in like our ideal, adult lives? What would that look like? How much money would that cost to be able to go to the places that we would like to go? And for me, being numbers oriented, like, I could really get behind that kind of vision creation of like very tangible. Here's the type of home I would like to live in. Here's the type of trips I would like to go on. Here's the type of work that I would like to, the amount of work.
How much time off do we want to take?
Exactly. And so for me, I think that was absolutely huge for us to get on the same page, because I think to some extent, up until we started operating that way, I feel like we have done since we've been married, our money is all completely separate. We have a joint account where we put money in each month to pay for rent and food and utilities and stuff, the things that we, so to speak, split living in the same house. But other than that, like, you have your own bank accounts, I have my own, we don't merge any of that. Yeah. And so I think that also probably played some into, like, there was a sense of like, all right, we're both like kind of doing our separate career tracks. We're both doing these things independently, and yes, we're married and we love each other and we love living life together and experiencing, going on trips and doing those sorts of things. But there wasn't, for me, a clear, like, what are we doing together? Yeah. Like, I'm personally have been searching for what's the perfect job for me, where I feel enjoyment and I'm getting paid what I feel like I deserve. But that was like only me. That was just me worried about me. That wasn't, I need to make more money to support us, because you were self-supporting yourself and on your own track, trying to do your own self-analysis of your business and what's the next step and how do you grow what you're up to. But it wasn't like, all right, what are we up to? Yes, we had been like looking at buying homes in the neighborhood. We had started doing some of those things like together, but there wasn't really a plan.
It was like, oh, just that's the thing that you do
right
as a married couple. And this is not against anyone if that's part of your vision, but there was a part of us that was like, is this really what we want? Or are we just following into a pattern because that's what we think we should want? Versus like, okay, we, as you can hear, we really value traveling and experiences on planet Earth while we're here. And we value that way more than having like the fancy suburban home. And there's nothing against that, but I would say, like, yes, having we have a big vision for where we want to live, but we value being able to experience planet Earth because we're both very active people. But it wasn't until we got clear on like, what are we working towards? I think that then when we go off into our own professional lives during the week, we have that in the back of our mind where every decision we make allows us to close that gap. At least it's helped me a lot get like really crystal clear on every decision I make. Like, does this get me closer to what I want? Which we've been able to blend like the personal wants, the personal, vision as a partnership and professionally, at least for me, because what I'm doing professionally is so personal and is so like soul oriented. So yeah, numbers, reverse engineer your vision. So if you haven't taken time, number one is get a clear vision of what you want as an individual and with your partner. Sit down and take time. Like, we literally will use date night and we get takeout and we whip out our computers and we just get really clear on what we want and reverse engineer it from a numbers perspective, which I know can sometimes create some resistance, but it helps you get clear into the future and turn a dream into reality, and it doesn't have to stay in fantasy world.
And just one more thing on that. Since the first time that we went through that exercise has definitely changed what we have written down as what we want.
Yeah.
And so I think that has just been one extra thing for us as a couple to be able to connect on and be able to continue to shape that, because it's not going to be, oh, hey, 5 years ago we decided that we wanted this and we're going to keep doing that. But it's something for us to keep coming back to, say, hey, all right, last time this is where we landed. This is what we talked about wanting. Is that still the case? And a kind of a cool way for us to be able to continue to like solidify what we are up to.
Yes.
And have like a focused discussion topic almost. Like, hey, here was what we came up with last time. Let's walk back through that. Is this still where you're at?
Yeah.
Since 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, I would say we probably do it. I mean, I would recommend to those of you listening, if you want some resources on this, obviously reach out to me. But I would say we do this at least twice a year, if not do it quarterly, because permission to change, right? Like, values can change with things in your life. Your partner maybe gets a different job or business takes a different turn. It's okay to keep asking, like, is this still what we want? And when you have those conversations, it can uncover certain challenges that maybe your partner hasn't felt safe enough to express. So that's number 2, is don't be afraid to constantly address and confront challenges and work through it together, not because you're attacking each other, but if you have those subconscious challenges or subconscious resentments, that is going to energetically block you from manifesting what it is you want. So, anything to speak to that?
No, I think that one's in your wheelhouse.
Basically, just don't be afraid to address challenges with your partner.
I think that's something that we, at least for me, that's something that is not super easy for me. I think I do have a tendency to just like let things in the moment, if it's not a big deal, just kind of let things go, because it's easier, and I would prefer less confrontation to more.
Right.
And so if something's not like sufficiently big enough in the moment, I won't like bring it up necessarily immediately, but then there can be like a building in the background effect, and then at some point it's like, okay, that's enough. clearly had some resentment about one certain thing for a month or whatever, and then it can come out sideways sometimes. So that for me is definitely something that's not like, I'm not perfect at that, definitely still working on it. So I think bringing up even small things in the moment immediately or more frequently is something that is, I see it being beneficial when I do that, but I don't always.
You've gotten better. Which
I agree.
Point number 3, to help yourself become more self-aware in those instances of like, what is my body saying when this happens? What are my emotions saying? How can I be in touch with my emotion and not fear emotion? Is don't be afraid to hire support. Ben and I have hired, well, he mentioned Monica. She was a big catalyst. She was a trauma-informed relationship therapist who we saw in 2020 when the world changed, and us being extremely active people went from doing what we love and being able to travel, and the way that we connect, in my eyes, like when I travel, I connect to spirit. Like I feel very spiritual when I travel planet Earth, and when I can do it with my partner, it's even 10 times better to just experience different cultures, different experiences, whatever. So when that shut down, it brought up all of our shit. And we were really struggling, and this was a couple months after we got married, because we got married in February of 2020, and then the world changed. So we just kept feeling like we were bumping up against the same arguments, the same challenges, and I was like, bro, if this is what marriage is going to be like, this is not working for me.
Bro.
Like, I remember laying in bed one night, and I was like, this is not working. This is not working for me. And I feel like, and something that I have to continuously watch is because I have so much training in coaching and chiropractic and being a doctor, and I've read so much about mental health and relationships, and this is my wheelhouse. I had to be conscious of like, this is not for me to solve. I need help. You know, even though I'm a doctor and I help a lot of people, like I need help. So we asked, I don't even know who referred us to Monica. Do you remember?
No idea.
Gosh.
But that absolutely was one of the things that was kind of recurring. It
was a recurring pattern.
Well, it was feeling like, in the argument or confrontation, like you were the expert in other healing services, and so then you were the expert in how to solve our problem also. And that was like, I was unwilling to accept that. Like, yes, I absolutely acknowledge there are things on this planet that you know that I never will, and I'm comfortable with that. You're an expert in certain things, but I was feeling lots of resentment about you, from my perspective, acting like you had all the answers, and I needed to like get to your level to realize that you did know the answers. So for me, it was super helpful to go to an outside person, third party, who was not in our relationship, was not you, and for them to be able to be the expert. And I mean, just real blatantly, like, call us on some of our bullshit, right? Like, no, like, you're being ridiculous in how you're expecting this to go.
She probably had better language than that.
Probably, but that was the biggest.
Yeah, she called us on our patterns.
For sure. And, both of us, right? What, like, the reality, what it felt like to me of like, okay, Mel's the expert and I need to, get to her level. That wasn't real. We both had our own
patterns.
Yeah, default patterns, our own issues that had been with us probably most of our lives that needed to be talked about and confronted, for me to be aware of, all right, I can be understanding of what I know your default patterns to be, so that I can be more conscious of if I am acting in a way that then triggers that default response. And I then can intellectually know, okay, this is some of Mel's default response. I don't need to react in kind. I can be more compassionate in the moment because I know what your default is. And same thing for you to me, right? Like, what is my default? You can be compassionate, all of that. Yeah.
I remember a number of sessions with her, because I think we were going weekly for a while through the summer of 2020. And for those of you who have never worked with a relationship therapist, I highly recommend working with someone who is trauma informed and uses definitely more of a somatic approach. That was her whole thing, is like, what trauma triggers were still within us that would just explode at each other. And, it was getting to that root of like what was coming up for us when we felt challenged. And for me, it was like the deep wound of like, I don't matter. I think one of yours maybe was like, you don't know, like you don't understand. And so when we started to like know our deep wounds, like our deep core wounds, we could start to recognize that in each other of like, oh, he feels like he doesn't know, or I feel like I don't matter, which can be and show up very distorted in a lot of different ways. But getting to like the seed and then her helping us through, we did some like EMDR type stuff, was really, really powerful. So
yeah, I mean, I think that was exactly it, because then when you were acting like the expert, then that was triggering in me like, wow, I am super less than, and I'm not worthy of like being in this relationship. And then if I needed to take a moment because I was charged and angry, if I needed to take a moment, then that would trigger in you
the feeling
that you don't matter because I wasn't willing to lean into a difficult conversation like you were hoping that I would.
Yeah.
So then that was really our typical kind of cycle of how a comment about something, that could be pretty innocuous in the moment, like, hey, I need you to do this or whatever, that could then was just typically then turning into an argument where
brain stems would pop up.
Yeah, so I think learning from Monica just intellectually about what those default responses for each of us was super helpful, but also the ability to just bring in some specific languaging around like, I am feeling, I mean, I know for me that was a struggle, was like actually tapping into like verbalizing what is the emotion in the moment, because it was just like, not something that I've spent a lot of time trying to understand about myself. And so like having the colored wheel of all the emotions, it was just like, hey, I am feeling this in this moment. You are a part of that response in my body because we are interacting, but like, I just need to say it out loud so that you can hear me.
Yep. And I think having someone else hear and witness us and just holding the space is key. Because now I feel like we can do it for each other and not necessarily like give advice, but just hear and see each other, which is powerful.
Totally.
So yeah, that point is, don't be afraid to hire support, guides, mentors, coaches. We've done some seminars together that have helped us get on the same page as far as even our lexicon, specifically Landmark Forum. I know some people have different opinions about that, but the first forum, I, of course, was the crazy person that did the whole thing, did all the seminars.
Obviously.
But I did it, and then Ben did it. It was really helpful for us to get clear on like, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, or are we like throwing rackets around, which is the type of lexicon that Landmark uses. But it was a very powerful thing for us to go through, to see where these like core things originated, and to own ourselves as individuals and just have a shared language of, being a responsible adult. Like, I'm just throwing a racket, I'm just telling a story, I'm maybe triggered, I'm more emotional, and just taking responsibility so that your partner can just understand where you're at and be like, what do you need? How can I support you in that,
Yeah, I think having the shared language or lexicon was and is still beneficial, because like, it provided the ability to shorten what needed to be said, and there was absolute clarity in what that meant. Like, Mel, I'm running a racket on you right now. You know exactly what that means, and I don't have to go into the details of exactly what that means and all of that, because and that can then, that's so much easier to just say in the moment, even if I'm upset or charged or whatever, but you clearly know what that means. And there was like so much that went into learning about that, and to do some of those things together. But I think that's a fair point that you just brought up, which is, I think is worth mentioning is like, you were introduced to Landmark as a resource to learn things and learn strategies on how to show up. You took that all the way through everything that they offer. I was willing to go and step foot in that arena, but I didn't go all the way through and do everything. And I think that for me is kind of how I need you to be able to show up for me, is to allow me to learn and try something new, but not have to do it the same way that you do, or not have to do it to the fullest extent that you do. Yes, I am willing to learn something new and try a different experience, maybe something that's uncomfortable for me. But I don't have to follow it all the way through to the end where you got to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think even the language that I probably learned and was able to utilize in our relationship was, rather than be like, you need to do this, I came at it from a perspective of like, what did I gain? How did it serve me? And how do I see this supporting us? And, you know, going in it together of like, I believe in us and I desire this for us. Is that something you desire too? How can we create this together versus like, you need to do this program because you're broken. Like anytime you approach your partner like that, good luck. It's not going to work. So yeah, unless
they're really receptive to that. Maybe there are people who are receptive to that.
There might be, but there's some other issues going on there. I don't know.
I definitely wasn't.
No.
I definitely needed it to be more collaborative of like, hey, I learned some really cool things here. I think it would be great if we could learn some of them together, as opposed to, I learned all this stuff, you know none of it, and you need to go learn it before we can have a healthy conversation.
Yeah, because I think the old Mel communicating it that old way was more because like I did long for us to feel a sense of connection in things I was doing, and I felt that sense of like, I want to connect with someone who I really love. So learning how to communicate it from that perspective, but also allowing your own way of doing it, right? And I think that goes to like point number 4 is do your self work, like know thyself first. And then everything else around you starts to transform. So the more that you can, if there are things about your partner that maybe agitate you, irritate you, you don't really like, really look at that and say, well, what in my partner am I seeing that I haven't learned to love in myself? One of my Immersion clients, what did she say? There's this quote that's like, what in them am I seeing that I don't love within myself? Or what in them is something that in me that is irritated? Because the only reason that we can like recognize that is because of our own mirror neuron system. So instead of projecting and trying to change your partner, if there's something outside of you that's charging you, which those of you who know the type of breakthrough work that I do, if there's something outside of you that's charging you and you're trying to control it, first start with what's happening inside of you that you haven't learned to love. And part of me, I think, was like learning to love the part of myself that also wanted to do things my own way versus what an institution says or what a coach says, right? So it's kind of a both and situation, but it comes back to like doing your own work even in a relationship and not depending on your partner to constantly evolve or change, but like you're an individual, right? And if you constantly are dependent on other people around you changing, that's a form of codependency. And that you're giving away your autonomy and your power. So anything on do your work, otherwise I'll go to the next one.
I mean, I guess it's kind of what I've said before, but like that doesn't need to be, at least from my perspective, that doesn't need to be you do all of the same things.
No.
I think that was the biggest change in how I could feel comfortable showing up in my own way, and that's going to look different. Yep. And that means that I'm not necessarily going to work with the same people or do the same things, and that needs to be okay for me and for you.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then there needs to be a conversation around it. And but it doesn't need to be. At least for me, it wasn't working when it was like felt more like an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Like I had this transformative breakthrough, learning this or meeting this person or going to this seminar. Now I need you to do that, and until then, like, grow up, basically. You know?
Yeah. I think if you're listening to this, or maybe you shared this episode with your partner, as Ben is beautifully speaking to, like, they may not want to do the same things as you because they want their own experience, but you can set aside time to come together and talk about what you each learned, right? And I think when they can choose something on their own, that the process of self-discovery is way more sustainable than trying to like tell someone how to do it, right? And you know, my point on this is when you're able to allow that person to be on their own process of self-discovery, I lost what I was going to say about that. Maybe it'll come back. I don't know. It was in my brain. It'll come back. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Point number 5, make each other a priority. And that goes to those of you who are like entrepreneurs and leaders, and you're up to a lot of things. Make sure that you're making your partner a priority in their human needs. Again, you don't need to like bow down at their feet, but just know if you're in a partnership, like you guys are going to have needs and wants, and it's important to keep asking like how can you get your values met while also like loving your partner and making them a priority by, for us, for example, scheduling out date nights. This works really well for me with my full schedule. If I know that we have things planned in the future together, whether it's a trip or a date night or something intentional, I think that minimizes the resentment. There's certain chapters of my business that they're more busy, and communicating that with Ben, like, hey, I'm kind of in a busy season, or right now I'm in some startup mode stuff and it's taking a little bit more time in the evenings. How can we plan a day together? How can we plan time together so that he doesn't get resentful that like he's just put last on the list?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think planning that out and being intentional with that and having dedicated time where you're not doing anything business related, and I'm not doing anything work related, and I'm not checking football scores, and you're not doing this, right? Like whatever that looks like, but being really intentional with the time that we are scheduling in advance, so that can allow us the grace in the other times to follow through on the other things outside of our relationship that do need our time and attention. Yep.
And that goes into our last point, which is get on the same page with each other's values. So Ben and I have relatively different values. I think we both value travel, but my highest values are teaching. I love teaching, and I feel like this is an example of that. Like I asked my husband to be on a podcast.
This is not my highest value.
It's not his highest value. But
I've got coffee, which is probably one of my highest values. So we make it work.
Yeah, I think you've shared great insight. I appreciate you doing this with me.
You're welcome.
But understanding each other's values and understanding that you probably have very different values, because opposites do attract, to get you to wake up to your wholeness. And when you can know each other's values and respect each other's values, I think that allows the relationship to be able to ebb and flow with less challenge and more fun and more curiosity. And as Ben was saying before, like we know our highest values, and so when we can live in those while also making each other a priority of in space time, like very intentional time where we go on dates, we travel, all of that, it allows us to fulfill our highest values as individuals while simultaneously creating being able to coexist in partnership with love and respect and autonomy and fun, and not feel like we need each other. But something that we say is like we choose each other every day. Like we choose to love each other. Love is action. It's not just this like fantasy honeymoon thing, but like you have to choose to show up for each other. You have to choose each other every day, and not just assume that this honeymoon phase is going to last, because that's just not reality. When you're with someone for 10 plus years, that's not reality. But knowing that the other person is choosing you for who you are and loving all parts of you is such a gift. And I'm really grateful for that about our relationship and about you.
I received that. One thing to add to that, I think it's even really recently, there's been some cool ways that we've found to be able to merge our different but high values, right? So for you, it is a lot of how you're building your businesses is because of your values in helping people, right? And for me, that's not a value of mine, is the helping people part. That's not what I'm about. But there's things that I've been able to plug into with your business that are my highest value, which is I just love technology and learning new stuff and being able to use my brain in challenging ways. And so feels like more recently there have been numerous opportunities where I can plug in and be super helpful to what you're up to in some of the technology in the back end of your businesses that is not meaningful for you, but it can help serve your value, right? So there's it's not obvious, but it's absolutely serving both of us, and then we're also doing things together. So that's been for me really cool, where I'm not in your business, I don't own any of it, but I'm in this partnership. And if there's a way that I can plug in and help provide value in a way that's meaningful for me because it's interesting and cool and a technology challenge, and then it helps you.
I hate that shit.
And I love it. And I love that stuff. And that's been, I don't think we were very intentional about finding things like that for quite a while. And it just kind of happened within the last few months. But I think that's something that's been really cool. And I think that I would like to lean into that more and to be able to figure out what are the other parts of like your business that you maybe don't hate, but like isn't
lower priority,
isn't part of your high values.
Yeah.
But if there's some of those things that are a high value for me that I can help with your spreadsheets and that kind of stuff, right? Like I know that's super cliche, spreadsheets, blah blah blah.
But it's helpful.
But there's totally, and some of that I really enjoy. I mean, I've built out like crazy spreadsheets for my own life and for things that I do with my friends just because I enjoy that shit. And if you hate it, then let's figure out a way to fulfill both of our values and do it collectively. Yeah. So I think that's been something cool that we've been doing more recently.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that excites you, because I am not super inspired by that. I'll do it because it needs to be done. And I've delegated a lot of that in one business, but this other, my other businesses that I'm growing. And if it is in alignment with your values or your partner's values and they are inspired by it, then why not make it work? But I think it's been interesting to watch you step into that. And then all of a sudden, like, you've had other opportunities that are more entrepreneurial show up in your life where people are like paying you to like do those things, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, it's been different and new. Figuring it out.
The universe opens up for you when you're in alignment with your values, and it's cool to watch your partner do the same. So, okay. Well, those are our points for all of you. I know this episode is a little over an hour, so thanks for sticking with us. I hope that this brought you value in your own relationship with yourself, as well as if you are in partnership with someone, some strategies that you can utilize when it comes to communication and loving each other for as you are and not trying to change them. So I am very grateful for you in my life. I'm just very grateful for you, and thanks for doing this. I know it's not high on your values, but I know it will bring people value who listen because they've been asking for it. So thank you.
We give the people what they want.
Do you have any
I'm also grateful for you, to be clear.
I don't know if we give the people what they want all the time, but this is a start.
Have they been like commenting that they want to hear from me, or has it been people telling you that they want to see
people
me
telling me they want a relationship podcast of how you navigate
with me?
Well, who else am I in relationship with?
Well, I don't know. You could do it on your own.
No, you have a different
I'm
point
just
of
trying
view.
to get clear on what have the people been asking for. You made it seem like they've been asking for me on the podcast.
Just relationship stuff.
Got it.
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay. Until next time, this is Dr. Mel. I don't know if Ben will come back, but
I don't know either. I guess we'll see.
Thank you for joining us on the Project Lioness podcast. Until next time, peace. Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.